Hey everybody, welcome. Look at this. She's here. And Megan is on set here in Florida with us today, and we are glad to have all of you joining us. Glad to have you here 2 weeks before the bar exam. Megan, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I know. I'm on the East Coast until after the bar this year, so
Yeah.
needed a little change of pace after being stuck at home for a year and a half. So here we go.
Okay. And we just recognized before we went on camera that we're a little
Yeah, a little matchy-matchy here.
white shirts, white room. There you go. In any event, we are going to take some questions that you've got for us. We don't have a lot of questions today, which is great. I think that what it means is everybody's buckling into their studies, don't you? That they're just doing their work and getting underway. So what's happening in the bar exam world, Megan?
This was a bit of a more quiet week. There's some more of the discussions like we've been talking about. We talked about last week of some places that are starting preliminary talks or discussions on what's the future of the bar exam look like. I thought it was interesting that California acknowledged this past week that NCBE moving away from the MBE is going to mean that California is going to have to make some changes and some decisions.
That was interesting, wasn't it? That they just said the obvious,
Yeah.
but the thing that we've been talking about for so long, which was how does California deal with that new exam if there's no more multi-state?
Yeah, so really interesting. The Oregon Supreme Court asked for some more time to figure out if they're going to do the alternate licensing. So definitely nothing that's going to impact July students, nothing even that's going to impact February students for 2022, but just some things that we're keeping our eyes on for sure in the general bar exam world.
Yeah, I also thought it was interesting that California is asking the New York bar examiners to come and talk to them about what they're learning and what their study is and what they discovered. And of course, we've talked about that study in our 6 keys to bar exam success and getting on the pass list. And so I think it's this movement between these big states now to start saying, do we want to be part of the UBE? Do we want to do something different? Because that's part of the New York story, isn't it? That they're saying, maybe we don't want to be in the UBE anymore.
Exactly. It's really interesting. I just think we're very much in the next, not right now, but in the 3 to 5 years, going to be seeing a real sea change in the bar exam world. And so it's very interesting. It's not anything I want people to get wrapped around the axle about, but it's certainly something that we're keeping our eyes on. And for those of you, as you pass your exam, you are a stakeholder in this, right? This is something that impacts you even once you've already passed the bar. So just really interesting to keep an eye out for and seeing that concept, right? We want each of you to be the types of lawyers who pass the bar exam and then don't pull the ladder up behind you, but instead figure out, hey, maybe we can figure out some way to get more people up here instead of saying, well, I made it through and that's all that I'm the last one in.
Yeah, don't be a jerk. Okay? No more jerks. Right? Our profession. So I think that's all interesting. We'll see how it all plays out. I know for those who are getting ready for the exam in a couple of weeks, they're like, please, I don't care. We got that. But we wanted to just keep everybody updated on what was going on there. One other piece of news that I did see just in passing was that Texas, which is doing their exam in person in July, actually dropped the mask.
Yes, for the in-person requirements. So now I believe they said masks are optional. So you can still wear them if you would like to. So obviously there's no concern in terms of cheating or privacy or things like that. They're fine with you wearing it. But yes, they will not be requiring it, which does mean that you need to be aware of that depending on your comfort level, your own vaccination status, your own sort of idiosyncratic needs and wants. Just something to be aware of.
And if you're going to wear a mask, you should be wearing a mask the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
Every day, all day long. Because I got to tell you, and I know you flew coastal wearing a mask. It's a big deal, isn't it, to wear a mask that long?
Yeah, I think yesterday flying from California to the East Coast, I was definitely by far the longest I've ever had a mask on. And so it's good. You got to practice it. Yeah, if you're taking the exam in person in a mask, you need to be practicing in a mask. You need to be wearing it as much as possible. So even around your house, so that you get used to what it feels like and so that it's just not a consideration for you on test day.
Yeah. And of course, if you're taking the exam at home, you're not a problem. You've got a different set of concerns. We'll talk about those later. But so that's where we are. I know people are settling in now to start to figure out travel plans for those that are traveling in person. We do have some jurisdictions in person. We have the majority, I think, are online for this exam. And then just a quick reminder, in February of 2022, at least right now, everything is an in-person exam. The national conference has said they will not do an online test. So as far as we know at this point, hopefully the COVID variants will not get to be too much, and the exam will stay in that setting. Although I personally like the online exam.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits for sure.
We gotta get through all the news.
Yeah, the other thing, Celebration Bar Review news though, that we want to share, Jackson, if you want to talk about the new platform that will be coming in after the July exam. So don't worry, if you're taking the July exam, we are not moving anything, not changing anything for you. Yeah. But for the February 2022 students.
Yeah, so we've been working on a new course delivery platform, and I've been obsessing about it. Not that I would obsess, but it's been very exciting for me. We've been building this platform to make it easier for our students to find exactly what they need, where they need it, and when they need it. No more searching, what playlist is it in, what module is it in, what part of the outline am I reading, what name of the file, what questions am I doing. And we have already opened to new students what we're calling the UBE Success course. So UBE is already in that platform. It went live last night, and we will migrate our 2022 bar takers for the UBE to that new platform after August 1st. So after the bar exam is done. So again, everybody just relax. It's got all kinds of extras and really wonderful things in it. So anyway, hope you like that. I'm excited about it, you can tell. Yeah, I geek out about that stuff, don't I?
No, it's good. It's good. We're always making improvements and changes.
So there you go. All right.
Great. All right, so let's go through some questions. All right, can you remind me which was the Q&A webinar when you reviewed the February 2021 exam preview?
Yeah, that one kind of puzzled me. What I think is most relevant for everybody is that I have recorded July 2021 previews, and that's what you should be looking at, because the July 21 preview is actually also a look back at the February 2021 exams in some detail, actually. We can't talk about those exams in detail until they're released to us. And so, believe it or not, we've just come out of that quarantine period with the bar examiners. And so I have prepared a preview video for the July 2021 exam. You'll find it at the top of your video playlist in every state. And that's the exam, or that's the video that looks back at February 2021. Now, if you're not taking the bar exam in July, it's still a pretty good video to watch, just because we look back at that other one and I give you my trends and we'll see what happens. I load the other P word for this, but that's where the video is. The February preview videos have been deleted. They're gone because I don't want people to know what I predict. No, it was actually pretty accurate. It's old news, so we tried to get rid of it. That's where we go. So I hope that's answering that student's question.
I don't touch the preview video with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, so. I've tried. I keep trying to get you to do that. For some strange reason, you don't want to go on camera with that. All right, fine.
All right. Next is someone who is looking for FLA examples of responses to the essay questions.
Yeah.
So I can talk about that. Yeah. So basically what it is we have model answers, sample answers, and drafter's point sheets, which will sometimes say discussion. So the model answers are in FLA style, written by our editors, not under time conditions though. The sample answers come from the bar examiners. We can't edit them. They are usually actual answers that people wrote on the test. They can be very wildly in how good they are, but sometimes it's helpful because you look and say, that was a passing answer. So I really need to remember that the bar is not as high as I think it is for passing here. And then the discussions are given by the examiners, and they are not an answer to the question. They are instead a discussion of the problems in the question, what the conflicts are, what the law is.
They're really designed to help the graders, aren't they, in the state? Yes, so the grader says, here's what I'm supposed to be looking for, and the weight I assign. That's the part I love, don't you?
Yes, I do too. Yeah, when it gives you percentages after each, they say point, so it'll say 0.1, 0.2A, 0.2B, and it gives you percentages, which tells you the weighting for each question within the question. So I find that they're all helpful in their own ways. So we do have a variety. We're not going to see a model answer for every single one. Certainly also because we have so many questions that it would be absolutely impossible. That would be like 5 people's full-time jobs to just write the models in FLA style. But we are constantly adding new ones. I know there's ones that are going to be added in Georgia after this exam from the last one. I mean, we're just always pushing through as we have editors who write them and we edit them and check them and make sure that they're refined to what we're looking for. Look in the newer exams, although I'll say we don't have them yet for most of the craziness of 2020. Yeah. You're going to have to look like 2019 because it just with what there were 7 exams given between all the states that we do, and it was a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a minute and just talk about this, because I think the underlying part of this question was, if not every answer is in FLA, does that mean you shouldn't use that writing style?
Yeah, that's a good question. So definitely FLA is one way to write it. And so it's the way that we advocate. It's certainly the way that we think is the easiest. I think it makes the most sense. I think it forces you to not skip any steps, which, if you've talked with me about through writing workshops, that's my 100%, my push for it is that you can't skip a step. You can't leave off the analysis, which is the most important piece. You can't leave out the opposing argument, right? It forces you to show every step of your work. And so that's really helpful for sure. But we also recognize that the discussion can be really helpful. Like for some of the reasons you said, I think also the discussion is really helpful to see, get a feel for, why did the examiners say this? What are they looking for? What does it mean when the examiners give me this piece of information in the essay? Oh, here, because they're talking about it under point 2. And so they wanted a discussion of what was important about this particular fact, what was important about this, how this led you into this Supreme Court precedent, something like that. So definitely there's a lot to be gleaned from that. And then certainly I think with the sample answers, I think that kind of proves the point that, because what people say is, don't you have to do IRAC? Yeah. Oh my goodness, look at the sample answers. Most of them are not in IRAC. They're not in any structure. There's no discernible structure. And these are passing answers.
No, they're chaos. The other day we were talking about this and I said, look, if you're a top 10 student at UVA or Stanford or Harvard or Yale, you can type so many words so fast, you can blurt out so much information, you can write 2,500 words in 30 minutes, and some of it's going to matter, but that isn't the standard that most people are going to reach. And so when you see those kind of answers at the other end, right, they're just not what you can produce. And so our writing system is for our students, right? And that's not to say our students aren't great students, they are. But that subset, the people that, the Megans of the world who are brilliant and can teach and know the law and went to great law schools, that student will pass the bar doing whatever, because they're just in that mode. But when somebody has tried that and it hasn't worked, if you're a retaker, then doing that, trying to achieve that goal is just not very productive. And so that's why we've been teaching the FLA method. It's why I created it 30 plus years ago, because we knew that there were people that had different writing needs. And so I know that for some of you, you're probably thinking, well, since not every answer is in FLA, that means I don't have to write FLA. The reality is you don't have to do anything. It's your exam, it's your journey. You and I were talking about the fact that if somebody chooses to use IRAC or CRAC or something else, that's their choice, but that's not what we teach. And so the FLA is there, and the model answers, there are enough of them for you to get the flow of it, to get the feeling for it. And so my other advice to people is, if you're struggling at all with FLA, sign up for a personal writing workshop, because that's 2 sessions with you to specifically look at mechanics, not the substance, but just how do you organize, how do you write, how do you structure it. And boy, we see a difference, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, if you're a February 22 student or later, once we get past the July exam, definitely the sooner the better. Sign up with me, talk with me about your writing. You will not regret it. Like, it's just really important to understand the writing. But yeah, definitely. FLA is not the only way, but it's definitely I think it is a fantastic alternative for people who have done IRAC, who've done CREC, and it's not worked for you. That's fine. There's no shame in that. I did not really like IRAC very much in law school. I did it because that's what I was supposed to do. But then I did FLA on the bar. It made more sense to me. It clicked really nicely. It flowed a lot easier. And so, yeah, that's kind of what
Yeah, now I got to say, I was only at Georgetown, not UVA. So, maybe we'll cut it down. At Georgetown, we taught FLA because that was once I had introduced that, we started to see what a difference it made for people. And the law firms that we were sending our graduates to were going, oh, it's nice that your graduates can actually. So anyway, FLA, a lot to be said about it, but I hope that answers that student's question about having answers in that format.
Yeah. All right. Next is, can you tell me what the procedures are if a student does not get through all their conference calls before the bar exam?
Yeah. Hopefully you're not getting through them because you're ready and you're prepped and you're able to go. In which case, congratulations, you remember the bar. If under the unlikely but unpleasant experience that you don't pass, those remaining calls just roll over and you'll be able to use them for your lifetime pass guarantee. So you're not out anything at all. I want to caution those of you taking the July exam who still have calls remaining though, because this is something that comes up a lot that we see. At the end, people are racing to just do assignments and just get conferences in because they've got them, use them or lose them. And we respect that. We're not going to turn anybody away, but it's also less productive, isn't it? And at a certain point, trying to do a conference a day for the last 10 days in a row, in my experience, doesn't really get the student any closer to passing the exam.
Exactly. It's the work smarter, not harder philosophy, I think. We want people to be using their time wisely. Part of that means, I know we've talked about this, that we don't want you to write a batch of 3 essays, unless it's the practice you're doing. But if it's for conferencing, it's really not particularly helpful to be like, I'm just going to blow through all these, sign up for a bunch of conferences, and then you get the feedback, but you actually aren't giving yourself the opportunity to put it into practice because you already wrote the essay that we're talking about the next day and the next, right? So we're saying the same thing. I'd be saying the same thing. You'd be telling the student the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, I know that it's hard and can feel a little bit like I am a list maker. And so I love a good list. I always have 5 lists going and I love checking things off. And sometimes I write down things that I already did that day because I just want to check it off. So I understand that temptation and that feeling of saying, I feel like I'll feel accomplished if I can say that I did X number of essays, I did X number of calls, I did X number of MBE questions, whatever it is. And I just want to caution everyone, so whatever it is for you, if you're feeling that pull, to not give into that, to make sure that you're focused on what you need to be focused on and that you're focused on improving and not just checking something off of the list. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I talk about this as being the uncomfortable time, right? I want you to be uncomfortable for at least another, because if you're uncomfortable, it means you're working on things that are not your happy place, right? You're working on the subjects that are most difficult for you. And getting feedback on that work, I think, is really important. But sometimes that gets lost in this kind of headlong rush that you got to use everything, right? If you use it, you'd lose it. That's why we changed our policy a few years ago to say you don't lose it. You're going to keep it if you need it. Our goal always is for the student to pass. It's not to extract the last ounce of everything. And sometimes you can do so much at the end that you're exhausted. You get to the exam and you're beat up. We're going to talk about how many practice MBEs to do here in a minute. But I think it's the same idea. You don't want to overwork. You want to work smarter and not harder. Let us guide you. If Megan's talking to you or if I'm talking to you, let us guide you about what we think you need to be doing, how many essays or performance tests, what the time frame ought to be, so that you've got a good working methodology for these next couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right. How should I proceed for this 12 days to the exam with essays and 2 more MBEs?
Yeah. That's the question, right? In terms of what you should be working on for the next 12 days. There's a couple of different ways to go at this, but my view is make a list of your subjects from hardest to easiest and focus each day, each study session on one of those topics and spend as many hours as you need on that subject, whether it's doing essays or doing essays and multiple choice, whatever it might be, and get yourself to that point of desensitizing to the subject. Right? So for me, it's property, as you well know. And if I'm having to get ready, I would spend time with property, writing property essays, doing property MBEs, until I felt like I'd seen enough of the topic and the subjects and the concerns that the examiners had around the topic, and felt like, okay, I can deal with that. If I opened up my test book and there was a property question, I'm not going to freak out. It's not like a plane full of snakes. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, the idea is to be not freaked out about the subject. And so by doing it that way, I think what happens is that you're putting your efforts where it's going to pay you the most dividend, right? There are going to be some subjects that are definitely harder for people, and there are going to be some that are easier. And then there's a bunch in the middle, right? I don't care if you get to the bunch in the middle. I certainly don't want you to spend time on the easy stuff, but I definitely want you at the hard stuff. So the other part of this, I think, is should you write a bunch of essays right now or do a bunch of MBEs, right? And I think here, and I want to get your take on this, but my view is that writing too many essays is actually counterproductive at the end. That you should do enough to feel comfortable and sharp, but not fatigued. So I've had people say to me, I'm going to write 3 essays every day for the last 2 weeks. What do you think about that when somebody says that?
I think it's a lot of time too.
Yeah.
So what I always suggest to people is that you should go ahead and write an essay, but then I would go in and find an essay that has either a model answer or a discussion, some kind of something that'll guide you. And what you want to do is read through the question and then set up your outline. So just type in like your basic headings, your structure that you're going to have. What are the conflicts? Then I would do the conflict pairs under each one. And I would maybe write, or even just in your head or out loud, say what's the law that would apply to that. And then I would think through, again, thinking, not typing, I would think through, okay, who would I pick to win? Why do I think that would be? And I would talk it through to myself. So I would like go through and figure out, all right, what do I think is the strong suit for this person? Or, okay, what were the 3 elements of that crime? Okay, which facts apply to that? And I think through it. And so then you can check yourself against the model answer. You can check yourself against the discussion, whatever it is. And so that way, what you end up doing is practicing both for the MBE and for the essay question, but you're not spending an hour or 45 minutes, depending on your jurisdiction. You're just spending maybe 10 to 15 minutes on it. And so it just helps you get through. If you're feeling the push of, I want to get through a ton of essays, I need to practice them, I think that's a really nice way to do it as well, because you just give yourself the opportunity to practice and understand the subject without spending a huge amount of time on it.
I think that's right. And I think the other interesting thing that we have felt for a while, but saw in the New York Access Lex study of retakers, was that doing excessive numbers of practice MBEs actually didn't have a positive correlation. That was an interesting finding, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That doing one practice MBE definitely had an impact. People that didn't do one practice didn't do as well as people that did one. But when they did 2 or 3 or 4, so what does that mean in practice? I think that you should do one of 2 tests for sure. You should either do the February 91 MBE, which understandably is practically as old as you, and it's only 6 subjects, and it shouldn't work at all. It's being retired by the NCBE, I think maybe next year or the year after, but it still continues to be accurate. Right? You could do that and some federal civil procedure questions on your own outside in the question bank, or you can do the 2006 OPE, which is a 200 question mixed topic, but again doesn't have civil procedure because the examiners didn't put it out that way. Those 2, I think, are good. Now, the reason I like the OPE is because the answer explanations are in writing. And in the February 91, it's literally so old, I never did them in writing. I just did lectures, and they're terrible lectures, just terrible quality. But good content, but just terrible quality. So they're in your course and you can listen to them, but there's no written answer explanation. So I think if you're weighing your time, I'm starting to lean towards the 2006 OPE. I think it's a more effective study tool. And then I would just use these other exams as question banks, doing a few questions at a time. But you could also use the mixed MBE practice, because that's got all 7 subjects in it. And that will give you the same impact, and you do 10 questions at a time or 20 or whatever it might be. So again, in years past, we have told people, plow through all of these tests. And I think we just tire people out, and I think that's a concern. That would be my sense, is to try and avoid that problem if you can. And don't beat yourself up. But I know some of you are feeling like, well, I got to do all the OPs and I got to do all the MBEs. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And then the question, how long is the lunch break in Florida? I'm just going to answer that you need to go and check for every jurisdiction, check with them on everything. So don't believe us, don't believe some guy on Reddit, don't believe, that your law school message board. Go and check with your jurisdiction on everything to make sure that you have up-to-date and accurate information, because as we've seen over the last year, everything is subject to change. And so I hate to, I refuse to even tell people, because it's, man, it could have been switched since the last time I looked.
And in Florida, they do it all different. Now, this is going to be an online exam. They should announce when you have to come back for each of these sections. If you're in an in-person exam, oh man, all bets are off.
Right.
In-person exams, I have no idea how they're checking people in and out. But online exams, you're going to get a break. But pay attention. They should tell you. And one of the things, we didn't talk about it, but I suppose we need to say, is you're going to get emails from the bar examiners, like this one about Exemplify, apparently, that somebody got today. Be checking your email. Please. Every exam, we have people that show up for the test and they're missing something that they needed, and they're like, I didn't see the email, it went to my spam folder. And the bar examiners have no mercy. It's on you. You got to check. So be looking everywhere, your promotions tab, your spam folder, whatever it might be. Okay.
All right. So let's chat about, what do people do preparation for these next 2 weeks? It's just a lot, and there are so many, different pieces falling into place and stressors that are going to come up. And what do you suggest that everyone who's taking the July exam should be doing right now and for the next?
I wanted to talk about this because I really am a big believer in habit. I do the same things, the same time, same day. I wear the same shirt, same color shirt. My life is all built around habit. Makes you crazy, doesn't it? But anyway, we won't go there. So I think for these 2 weeks, you can build some really good habits for the exam. So here's what I would do starting today. I would figure out what time you want to go to bed on the nights, Monday night and Tuesday night of the bar exam, and start going to bed at that time, regardless of what your study had been. If you're planning to go to bed at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, that's your bedtime every night, weekends, everything from that. So you just build that habit. And you got to get up at the time that you're going to get up on Tuesday and Wednesday morning, which should be a bit earlier than a normal time, because you've got to get up, you want to get going, you want to have your breakfast, you want to be ready, whether you're doing the test online or in person, you've got to build all that in. So whatever your morning wake up time is, it needs to start being your wake up time starting tomorrow morning. I just think that's an absolute. And if you're changing time zones because you're traveling, you got to get into that time zone now. Now, that's less of a problem this year than most years, but whatever. And if you're taking the test, if you're in Taiwan and you're taking the New York bar exam online, you got to get on New York time, because the test is being given on Eastern time. So you need to make that switch today. Okay. In my view, anything under 2 weeks, it's tough to build a habit. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I think, is you want to start setting your nutrition in the way that it's going to be on the exam. So you want to be eating the breakfast that you're going to have on exam days. You want the kind of lunch you're going to have on exam days. And you need to think that through and figure it out, and then start eating it, even if you get bored with it. Breakfast and lunch, I feel pretty strongly about being the same every day. Dinner, obviously some variety is great, although don't go crazy. But think about what you're eating. so that you are not bogging yourself down. If you have any kind of a medical condition, make sure that you're taking care of that, watching for that. Also, weirdly enough, you got to get your prescriptions filled, right? Mm-hmm. And you got to make sure that your prescriptions are ready. And for goodness sake, please don't start or stop some medications. Every exam, this happens, doesn't it? We have students that say, I decided not to take my X during the test. Don't do that.
No changes. No major changes to your life in the next 2 weeks where at all possible, for as much as you are capable of controlling that, which I understand there's some things out of our control, but yes, please just keep on a nice, even keel.
Be the duck.
Be boring. Honestly, be boring the next 2 weeks. You don't want any surprises. You don't want anything to throw you off. You don't want to get sick because you just want to make sure that everything is just real boring. You don't even need lists because everything is just so the same every day that you don't even have to think about it.
Kind of describing my life. So nutrition is important, and you want to watch the kinds of foods you're eating. Lots of fruits, lots of vegetables. Really, just making good food choices, I think, is important. I know this is the time when people want to binge on coffee and donuts. I do drink my coffee, but that's my routine, and it would be like me stopping coffee right now would be very bad. Okay, that would not be something we want to do. And then the third part of this for me is exercise. I know that at this moment you feel like you can't necessarily afford to go to the gym, and you certainly can't have that 2-hour gym experience. But you can get up every day and take a walk and get some exercise and be out and walk or bike or do something, and for at least a half an hour. I just want you to be moving. And most of us have on our, devices. You don't use a device?
No.
Okay, fine. See, my device tells me to get up and move every 50 minutes, whether I like it or not. And so I do. I'm a slave to that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, must get up. But be moving. Don't get locked into your chair for 10 hours a day. So the study schedule for me that I would recommend to people is 3 hours in the morning, max, then a lunch break, then 3 hours in the afternoon, and then an extended dinner break and 2 hours in the evening, along with the process that we described last week of photo reading or skimming your outlines every night before you go to bed, and then and reading your mind maps and playing those overnight while you're sleeping. Doing that kind of regular routine really will help, I think, in terms of just setting the mood and the expectation. And then what happens is test day feels normal, right? If you're online, go ahead and set up where you're going to be taking the exam so that room is the room you're going to be using, and get used to sitting in that chair. I had a student the last exam who said, I decided to switch chairs on the exam for exam day, and it wasn't comfortable. Yeah, don't do that. Find your comfy chair and be there and make sure that's working for you. So I think that's part of it. Now, another thing that I have often said, and it's a little controversial, although it's not all that critical, but I'm a big believer in dressing for the exam. And I know this makes people a little nuts, but I really believe, whether you're in person or online, and if you're online, you can dress from here up. But I like the idea that if the gentlemen are wearing a jacket and a tie, obviously a shirt, and the women are in their court suits, you wear the pearls from that era, and that you look like you're there because this is your profession. This is the way you're going to dress as a member of the profession when you're going to court and doing all that. I love this look I'm getting. She hates this.
No, it's okay. A lot of people really love it.
And you have to understand that Megan is very formal sometimes, but extremely casual as well.
California, we're not the most dressy state.
No, you're not. I don't know what's up with you guys. Anyway, but here's my concession to this for the online exam. I think you can be barefoot while you're taking the exam. And June actually pointed this out to me. She said, when we talk about grounding ourselves, we want to have our feet on the floor. We want to be engaged physically. So I'm okay with from here up. And I'm barefoot today. Go for barefoot. That's okay. Now, if you're at the in these in-person exams, there are states that won't let you wear flip-flops into the room.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Florida won't let you do that.
Weird.
And of course, Virginia, your home state, you had to dress up anyway.
Virginia made it, but I was 11 weeks pregnant when I took the California bar, so I was wearing a sweatshirt and pants, let's be honest. But I understand. No, I understand. It's anything that gets you into that good mindset. So I totally agree with that. I think on the whole, it's don't dress like you're, taking a international plane trip, right? Like you just want to feel good. So whatever it is for you that makes you feel good, not what makes you feel like, oh, good, I can like lounge in front of the TV. Because you really, you don't want to be in that kind of mindset. You want to be comfortable, right? You don't want to be like messing with your tie or something, but you do want to make sure that you feel good. You feel like your head is in the right space. So no, I
think that's definitely, and I think you want to know that you're coming to do business, right? You're coming for a serious purpose. You have worked really hard for this, and if you're in person, I got to tell you, you dress up. I get this comment all the time from students out because they say people come up to them and ask them questions. They think they're a proctor. Right. They're treated differently in the room. It's really an interesting, it's fascinating thing. They get way less scrutiny from the proctors that are there. It's just weird, right?
Well, you look like a grown-up. You look
like a grown-up. There you go. All right, so there you go.
No, it's good advice. It's good advice.
All right, okay. What else did we have there?
Tech prep. That is a big one, especially this year. Anybody who's doing online stuff for sure.
Yeah, and tech prep starts with reading the email. It makes sure that you've got your ExamSoft or Examplify software and the latest version. We had this happen a bunch last year. Remember, they kept updating versions in the last 2 weeks.
Hopefully not this time.
I hope not, although I just don't know. So make sure you're checking that. Make sure your equipment is working.
Yes.
I know this sounds so stupid, but make sure that you've got the right computer. It's loaded there. You've offloaded all the programs that screw up your computer. You've got power sources. You are connected. One of the things that's really helpful that we do is we use an adapter on our laptops to plug into Ethernet, and we run through an Ethernet cable rather than Wi-Fi. It's just one of those things that's useful to do and not very expensive. And you can buy the adapters on Amazon and just plug them in, and you plug that right into your router, and then you plug in the little cable from your laptop to the adapter, and poof, you're there. So that kind of tech prep is important to do. Make sure you've got what you need. Make sure also that you're following the rules. There have been rules about double monitors and the size of monitors and laptops and having a removable mouse and so on. You just want to check all that stuff and make sure you're okay. Hate for that stuff to happen. We also had a student, remember last exam, who went to a hotel to take the exam, and the hotel didn't have reliable Wi-Fi.
Right.
If you're going someplace to take the exam in an online setting, be double, triple, quadruple sure that everything is set up the way it should be and that you're all set to go. Also have some backups. How do you reach Examplify and ExamSoft? And you had a great tip for this.
So if you do have any problems in previous exams where people have had problems, Twitter is actually the easiest way to get a hold of ExamSoft. I know. So people would be like on the phone, because on the day of the exam, I'm monitoring like all the bar chatter on Twitter. And so there were huge wait times on the phone for people who were trying to get through to ExamSoft when they were having trouble logging in. But then on Twitter, ExamSoft was answering immediately. And so even the ExamSoft people on Twitter were saying like, yes, this is the easiest way. I can't make any promises. Obviously, I'm not in control of ExamSoft, but definitely I would say be prepared to, obviously your cell phone can't be in the room, but if you can't log in, have your cell phone outside of the room in a really easily accessible place so that you can call them, have the number prepped just in case you're going to need it. But then also I would say be prepared to try and reach them on social media as well, because sometimes it's just a little bit quicker way of getting a hold of them. And you just want them to be able to let you into that exam as quickly as possible.
And here's another thing. If you're going to a live in-person exam, don't bring your cell phone.
Right.
We had a student disqualified. They left a cell phone in their backpack in the storage room at the back of the testing center, and that disqualified them. You just can't do it. So check the rules, read the rules, okay? You're going to be a lawyer, you're going to live in a rule-based. you got to know the rules, and the examiners expect that. So tech prep is certainly a part of that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to talk about selective intuition now?
Yeah, real quickly. One of the things that as we start to make this transition to the final set of practice questions is that I see students start to press, they work too hard, and they try to overread. And we had that question just a few minutes ago about should I photo read the questions themselves? The answer to that is no, you don't photo read the question. What you do is you read the question and you work in a 90-second time frame. And 90 seconds from the time you start to read the question until you mark your answer. Now that is more than enough time, and I've done this exercise, we did it last night with June's group coaching call, where you read the question at a rapid pace, right? So you're not reading word for word, line for line, you're not trying to parse it or break it down, you're just reading at a pretty quick pace, and you read only to the question stem, the call of the question. You stop, and this is the key to selective intuition, all right? You want the key, folks, here's the key. Do not read the answer choices. Read to the spot where they start and stop right there. And then at that moment, ask yourself, what's my response to this question? In other words, what are they asking me? Plaintiff win, defendant win, is this constitutional or unconstitutional? Is it admissible evidence or inadmissible? There will be an either or kind of choice, typically, in almost every question. Get that answer in your mind and the reason. It's admissible because, it's constitutional because, the plaintiff wins because, and frame that up in your mind. Mm-hmm. Then with that framework in mind, now look at the answer choices and find the one that's closest and mark it. Now, why don't you look at the answer choices before you do that? The reason is that answer choices are seductively misleading, right? They send you down 4 different rabbit holes, only one of which actually works. And I'm very much into Peter Rabbit these days. I'm sure there's a Peter Rabbit analogy for this, but you do not want to go down that rabbit hole. You want to have a presumed answer, which is built on your selective intuition, which is really your non-conscious. It's all the studies you've done. It's everything not memorized, right? We're not saying, what did you memorize? Don't memorize the elements and come back that way. It's what do you know? What seems right to you? Look for that answer, mark it, and don't be distracted by the other choices. Now, what happens if you don't see your answer choice there at all? At that point, you have one of 2 choices, and I'm going to take the chickens route, okay? I know you've probably got a smarter way to do this. Before the exam, I pick a letter, A, B, C, or D. You can draw it out of a hat if you want, I don't care, but you pick one letter, and that becomes my default answer choice. If I literally don't see my choice there, I see nothing that looks like my choice, and I have selected the letter C for today, then every question I don't know the answer to becomes the letter C, because statistically, that's going to give me an extra 4 or 5 answers correct, okay? So that's the chicken's way out. The other way to do it is kinesthetically to look at the question and just ask yourself, and June's got some different techniques, but you could do different techniques in which you try to say, is answer A right? Is answer B right? Is answer C right? Is answer D right? The problem is if you're online, I don't think they're going to let you do that.
Oh,
I think that's going to be a problem. So it's only an in-person, but it's you basically take your thumb and forefinger and you tighten them down. And kinesthetically, if you say, is A the right answer, you're going to find it's hard to get your finger out. And it will only go out on the right answer. Don't ask me why. It's just the way it works. And there are other things you can do that are kinesthetic like that. But the point is you can't do any of them online. So I like my chicken's way out.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Hey, it's whatever works. I always tell people to remember, keep in mind that sometimes people will say, I looked and what I was looking for wasn't there. It's often because it's flipped. So, right, if it was, I'm looking for plaintiff wins because of X, it's phrased as defendant loses because of X or whatever it is. And so be really aware of that too, that it might not, the answer you're looking for, oftentimes I do find that it actually is there. Like the answer you're looking for actually is there. It's just that it's flipped or it's worded in a really odd way that you're like, I would never say it like that in 1,000 years. But they're like, yeah, that's why.
And you'll have time to do that because you didn't waste a long time reading the question. The other thing is, and we did this last night with June's call, we had one question. I just ran some randomly on the the mixed MBE practice and got to volunteer a couple people to help me. And one of the questions, the question was, and then you had to look at the answer choices. So they were like, what do we do? You read the first couple of words of each answer choice, and in this case, it said constitutional or unconstitutional. So that was your framework. And so I said, okay, so now the question is the law constitutional or unconstitutional, and why? And with that framework, then they were able to answer it. I do this exercise with students in my conferences from time to time. We did one the other day where a student did this. It was very nervous and very anxious about it. And we did a couple of them, and she got them both, and she was stunned. She was absolutely shocked. And I recorded it. It is absolutely just her reaction to, how did I know that? How did I know? How could I have done that? She hadn't studied it. They were completely random questions. And what she discovered was that her genius mind was doing what it needs to do. And that's where I think I want to leave everybody today, is that your genius mind is there. It is every bit as extensive, more so than Google or Amazon. And all you got to do is ask it the right question. If you ask the right questions, you're going to get the right answers. Now, there's a video in the course called Selective Intuition. You can find it in your Multistate module in the videos. I encourage you to check that out and to follow that. So I think we're right at an hour. I said we're going to be less than an hour, sorry, but there you go.
Yeah.
We used up the hour. Fun having you in the room.
Yeah,
very cool. We don't get to do this often. Usually only at boot camp season, so this is nice. We're going to do this again next week. We'll be back next week, same time, same white room. And we might switch up our matchy outfit. But in any event, hope everybody has a great study week. This is the productive week. This is where you go from not passing, maybe passing, to the passing zone, okay? But you get there by being really uncomfortable. Are you going to be the most fun person in your friends and family circle this week?
No, you're not.
Be boring. That's it. That's the title of this episode. Be boring. Thanks to all of you for being with us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.